Welcome to the Candace's Pack Dog Rescue Show with your host, JP Mendoza.
Thank you very much, Taniya. That's my good friend Taniya Wright. She also just happens to be a professional broadcaster. You could give her a follow at Taniya Wright. That's TANIYAWRIGHT. That's right, folks. It's a professional operation here at the Candace's Pack Dog Rescue Show. I run the show out of my state-of-the-art walk-in closet. Moving on. Thank you to everyone who checked out my intro episode, and to those who subscribed to the show so early. I really appreciate the support. I recorded that intro back in November of 2020, and since then, I've been recording interviews with some amazing people in the dog world. I have a bunch in the can, as they say in show business, but the plan is to release them weekly. I'm really excited to share them. There's been a few updates that I'm excited to announce since I recorded that intro episode. We earned our Silver Seal of Transparency on GuideStar by Candid. And GuideStar is basically an organization that provides transparency for nonprofits so that donors can make informed decisions on who they are donating to and what causes they want to support. So you can check out Candace's Pack Dog Rescue on GuideStar to check out our profile. So that's really cool. And we are one step away from the Gold Seal, which is basically providing Form 990, which is fancy talk for how much money did you guys make in a year? And that's just the form that gets filed for nonprofits and charities. So that is in due time. Also, I've been working 5 days a week now at Casper's Camp Hope here in Gainesville, Florida. I'm excited about this because it allows me to support my mission, not only with money, but also education. Because the more I learn, the more I can teach. And the more I can teach, hopefully it will prevent dogs from being given up or rehomed or surrendered to shelters. So I'm excited about that. We are also now available on Amazon Smile as a charity that you can choose. So the way Amazon Smile works is you choose Candace's Pack Dog Rescue as a charity on your Smile profile. And then every purchase you make after that, Amazon will donate 0.5% of your purchase on your behalf. So it's still the same Amazon for you. It's just that when you check out, 0.5% of your purchase, Amazon donates to the rescue. So it's a really easy way to support if that's what you want to do. If you don't have a charity already picked out on Amazon Smile, go to smile.amazon.com and choose Candace's Pack Dog Rescue as your charity. Speaking of support, if you'd like to make a direct donation, you can do so on our website, cpackdogrescue.org. I mentioned in my intro episode that due to our living situation, we don't have any rescue dogs at the moment. Well, since then, we are out of that situation, and we are hoping to make an exciting announcement in about a month or so. Let's just leave it at that. All right. Real quick before I get into our interview of the week with Janice Wolfe, I just wanted to share a piece of feedback that I got after I did an Instagram live on my friend Gonz's Instagram page from Okami Canine. We did an Instagram live that basically talked about structure and balance and dog psychology and how that's basically missing within the rescue world is, I think, a good way to sum up that IG Live. And afterwards, I got a message that says, this person said, "Glad to hear of a rescue so supportive of structure and balance. Our rescue is not on board, but our dog is thriving. So, I don't know emoji." So this piece of feedback really kind of touched me, and I guess, sort of reaffirmed that the idea I had for the rescue is not only needed, but supported. And when I asked this person if it was okay for me to use their feedback message and post it on my Instagram, they said it was okay just as long as I didn't show their name out of fear of backlash from their rescue. That's how unsupportive they are of the idea of structure and balance for a rescue dog. So, thank you very much to that person. Just know that I keep that message as motivation for me to keep going on with my mission. All right, finally, our interview of the week. I recorded this interview back in November of 2020. The thing that I remember the most is that I was pretty nervous before I started the interview. And it was really only because it was my first interview and I care about this project. I want this show to sound good. And Janice helped me calm down a little bit. And she's done a lot of TV and a lot of radio. She's been in the business, I believe, about 40 years. So media appearances is basically nothing for her. And she helped me calm down in the beginning. So that was really helpful. And she also has a long list of accomplishments and projects, which I'm not going to list here because I listed them in the beginning of the interview. I don't do that again in any of my other interviews. So that was just a little bit of a note for me. And the thing I remember the most about our conversation is that it was a great reflection for me on how far I've come with Candace as far as progress and how far I've come in terms of education and becoming a more confident leader for Candace. So I'm going to say this before every interview. You may not agree with everything my guests say on this show, but I believe if you stay open-minded, you can learn something from everyone you meet. Please welcome Janice Wolfe. Janice Wolfe, she is the founder and CEO of United Canine Professionals, which is an organization that trains people to become certified in natural canine behavior and rehabilitation. She's also the founder and CEO of Merlin's Kids, an organization that saves shelter dogs and street dogs and trains them to be service dogs for veterans and children with autism. She's also the founder of WYATT'S List, and she's also won several dog show championships with her champion Rhodesian Ridgebacks. She's also certified in pet loss and bereavement counseling at the Association for Pet Loss and Bereavement. She also runs pack walks on the weekends. I'm almost out of breath here, Janice. You also train dogs to detect cancers and other health issues, in which you do for firefighters and other first responders. Janice, is there anything you don't do with dogs?
Well, with dogs, probably no. Dogs or horses, I do a lot. I do search and rescue where I have the Ridgebacks go out and look for lost children when that happens, or lost animals, and the dogs find them, and I follow on horseback because I'm not as quick as the dogs are, right?
Yeah. Janice,
there's a lot. I was going to say, I've written a number of books and children's books, but it's all about the dog. It's really all about understanding what people need to do to have a better relationship with their dogs, and helping those dogs so that the people know what they're looking at and why certain things are not okay, like playing tug of war with a dog or a puppy. So it's kind of interesting to see, but if I can't change the human, I can't change the dog.
Exactly. I love that. That's perfectly said. Can I just take you back a little bit? I want to ask you, what was it about dogs specifically that made you want to work with them and turn it into a career?
Well, we're going back to, the dark ages when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, right? And They used to call me Dr. Doolittle when I was a little kid, and I would say my youngest memories are 4 or 5 years old, and neighbor kids or neighbors bringing, injured squirrels and injured birds. And I remember we got a skunk and all had to go for rabies shots because all of us touched the baby skunk. It's something about animals that we all know that animals are superior to humans because they don't have an ulterior motive and they're very raw and pure. And I think that's why I've always been drawn to animals and to special needs children. The reason that dogs particularly, and also horses, but dogs particularly, is I remember as a kid, one of my very good friends had a dog that bit her, never bit me, was very friendly with me, but bit her right above the eye. And I remember her dog magically going to some farm, and it was going to live in this farm, and the girl was never going to see it again.
Oh, wow.
And I went home and told my parents, and my parents said, the dog isn't going to a farm, but don't tell her that, but they're going to, put the dog to sleep because it bit their daughter. And it kind of resonated with me that, wow, this dog who is so sweet, and I really liked the dog. It was a big, hairy dog. Maybe it was a shepherd mix or a, Newfie mix or something, but it was a nice dog. And I remember just thinking, because at the same time, my dog had cancer and was dying. And I remember thinking, wow, they just put this dog to sleep, 2 years old, 3 years old, whatever. That was perfectly healthy. And here's my dog is dying, and we're fighting so hard to keep my dog alive. And meanwhile, this other dog was put to sleep, this healthy dog. And it really hit me that, we are really the stewards of these animals, that when they bite, and granted there are bad dogs. People say there aren't. There are bad dogs. They just haven't seen what I've seen, 35,000 plus dogs with behavioral issues. You see some bad dogs, but few and far between. And, it is true that there are a lot of bad owners, but there are ways to fix things. And what I've found through life is that you get those people who want to be fixing their dog, no matter what it takes, and helping and being a part of the process, and the ones who blame others for not fixing the dog. So it's either your fault, and if you accept the fact that, hey, I did this to my dog, or I rescued a dog that has these behavioral issues, it doesn't matter who broke it. It's like, who broke the vase? It doesn't matter. Grandma's vase is broken. Let's take it to an expert who can glue it back together and make it like it was never broken, versus hiding pieces under the carpet. And it's supposed to go away to a magic farm where, then kids grow up and they find out that their parents put their dog to sleep because it bit them. And these people grow up, these adults grow up now with a lot of behavioral issues themselves because they feel so guilty that, oh my gosh, if I didn't stick my face in the dog's face, the dog wouldn't have bitten me and he'd be alive. And people carry it into adulthood. And people also feel very guilty and responsible when their dog gets cancer, when their dog has some kind of reaction to medication and some other issues like that. And they feel guilty, or that it's their responsibility. So I've always loved people who say, teach me, because I was that kid. My parents always used to say, instead of naming me my middle name, they should have named me Y, because I would always ask, why? Janice, why? Why? Well, why is that? Why do dogs bark? Why do some dogs growl? Why does that dog pull that lady down the street? And why does my dog walk next to me? I always wanted to know why. And that's why I guess we're here, right? To help people to understand that just because someone who claims to be an expert says, well, your dog's not fixable, that just means they couldn't fix it. Doesn't mean
Exactly.
I can't fix it or you can't fix it.
Exactly.
And if you're committed to that animal, you're committed to that dog, we can fix it. I need your commitment. I don't care what the dog did. I care what you want, and that you're committed to that dog, because if you're committed to that dog, I'm committed to that dog. We're not going to stop till we fix it, and we will.
Yeah, it's always amazing to me how many owners will waste their money on dog training and you tell them, listen, you need to change what you're doing. You need to change your routine. You need to give the dog structure. You need to provide the dog A, B, and C. And then the people are looking at you like, what? I hired you to fix my dog. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we become like nanny 911. And that's why I don't do for as often as most people, because there's a whole board and trained shock collar group. And they're not so nice to dogs in their boarding facilities. And it's not everyone, but it's certainly a lot. When I take a dog, the dog basically is in my bed with my dogs, unless it's super aggressive, then I work with it. But I want that dog to be incorporated into my dogs' lives, because my dogs are stable. They won't do anything. If a dog tries to bite one of my dogs, they just walk away. It's like, yeah, whatever, mom will take care of it. And exactly what you said, you can't have somebody else fix your problem. If you eat the wrong foods and get sick, or if you're heavy and you want to lose weight, I'm not putting the Twinkie in your mouth. You are. And if your dog is broken and you're giving him basically Twinkies, which is food that's bad, right? Food that the dog can be allergic to, that can affect behavior, you're not helping. You have to get into a mindset of, I'm going to do what I have to make this a better relationship, or better relationship with my dog, or I'm going to be a better employee, or I'm going to do whatever my job is, I'm going to do better. And I think people really do have to look at this as it is a job. So when you rescue a dog or you take a puppy and they don't come with instructions, and you call me and you say, hey, Janice, can you keep my dog for a year and train it? Yeah, I'll do that. That's how I pay part of my mortgage. But when I give you the dog back, you still need to do the same things, because if you don't, yes, the dog is still going to be well behaved, but he's not going to be the best he can be. And dogs can offer us so much, and people just don't realize, because everything's that me, quick generation now, where we're all instant gratification. And behavioral rehabilitation, what I do, natural canine behavior rehabilitation, it doesn't take a long time. It's remarkably easy and quick, but you do have to do a little bit of work. If you have a bad marriage, you can't just say, oh, it's my wife's fault, it's my husband's fault. Guess what? Even if it's 5% your fault, that might be the 5% that's collapsing. You have control over it. And if you took that dog and you bought that dog or rescued that dog or adopted that dog, it's your responsibility. The same as you wouldn't return a child with autism. You wouldn't return a child with diabetes, hopefully, right? You would do what you had to do. And I think it can bring out the best in you. And when I see clients like you with your dog, with beautiful dog, this who I love, when I see you go from nervous and anxious and, oh my God, what do I do? Why is she doing this? She almost did this. Oh my gosh. To a confident person who's going out there and saying, hey, I did it. It's not that hard. You can do it too. That's what it's all about, is educating people. Please stop euthanizing your dogs. Please stop rehoming your dogs because you don't want to do it. If you don't want to do it, fine. But then don't start and don't get another dog afterwards hoping that one's going to be better. If you have one spoiled brat child, you're probably going to have a second and a third and a fourth if you don't become a different parent.
Right.
That's what
I agree.
love about you. You know, you're a great parent.
Thank you, Janice. You know what? I'm so glad you mentioned Candace, because we should probably put this into a little bit more context for everybody listening. So in 2014, that's when we adopted Candace, and we are probably the smartest people ever, because we adopted her from an online rescue site where we never got a chance to ever meet her beforehand. So I don't know what the thought process was there, but we did it probably based on her looks, which is a classic mistake, right? And when we met the foster parents who were transporting her up in Maryland. And I'll never forget, we were so happy, and we're like, oh, would you mind taking a picture? And it was my wife, Andrea, and I, and Candace, and she takes the picture, and then, we look at the picture later. It wasn't until later that I realized, I'm smiling, Andrea's smiling, and poor Candace is just standing there with her tail tucked between her legs, like, what is going on here? And it was just the first sign that I should have seen where she was just a nervous, fearful, shy, timid dog by nature. And we didn't have much of a story on her. The only thing we heard was that she was dropped off at an overnight pen at a kill shelter somewhere in South Carolina. And a woman who had German Shorthair Pointers on her ranch, I guess, had a friend that worked at the shelter, and they told her, listen, I got a GSP here. You might want to take her because she's like on death row. So she ended up taking her and putting her on the rescue site, which I will remain nameless. But that's how I ended up seeing her. So in hindsight, I don't regret the decision, because then I would have never met Candace, then we would have never met you. I would have never been more interested in dog behavior and then eventually, doing a rescue of my own. We were at our wits' end when we were at home with her, because she was afraid of everything. She was afraid of me. She was just very uncomfortable in her environment. And at the apartment complex that we were living in at the time was a woman who worked at the office, and she was asking us, how are you guys doing with your new dog? And we're telling her, it's a struggle, and she wants to hide all day, and she doesn't really know how to walk on a leash, and she's afraid of buses and cars. And then that's when she said, oh, you should call my dog trainer. Her name is Janice Wolfe. She's awesome. They call her the New Jersey Dog Whisperer, and you should for sure call her because she's like amazing. She works miracles. I was like, okay, well, I mean, anything at this point. So, and then, that I'll never forget. So my question for you, Janice, is, do you remember anything about our first consultation?
I do. I remember, I remember a lot about it, actually.
Good. Because the reason why I asked that question is because, and you already touched on it, I was not in the best headspace, when we called you, because this was supposed to be my dog, my happy-go-lucky dog that was going to play fetch with me all day and was just going to be happy while I was at work, and then I couldn't wait to come home and play with my dog all day. I had no idea about dogs. We had family dogs, and they were very low maintenance, middle of the pack kind of dogs, but she was just not that, and I had no idea how to have a dog like that, and I had no idea how to help her, and it affected me a lot. And when you came over, in fact, it wasn't even when you came over, it was the first phone call we had. Mm-hmm. I told you about, how I was feeling and this and that, and you just told me straight out. You said, listen, you got to shape up, buddy. Like, you got to get over it. Like, just do what you need to do to become more confident. Like, you being nervous and you being anxious is not helping her anxiety. And that was the first time I had ever heard anybody say anything like that to me, especially in relation to a dog or any pet. So what do you remember about your first impressions of us when you came over?
I remember, well, before that, when we were on the phone together, and believe it or not, I do remember that. And I remember every dog. I might not remember every person, but I do remember every dog I've ever worked with. I remember you were so nervous on the phone that you were all over the place. And that's why I said, you got to get yourself together, because this dog needs you now. That's my word. I said, this dog needs you now. This dog has not had any kind of, kind of steady, kind of good background. This dog has basically been fearful and anxious and nervous and afraid of everything. And now she's coming into your home, and you're giving her more of that. And the two of you are spiraling against each other. It's like a mirror where, you're nervous because she's nervous, and then she's nervous because you're nervous, and you're nervous because she's nervous, and we just keep going. And it's not a vicious cycle, but it is a consistent one. And the best way I remember I did tell you, she needs confidence. She doesn't need cookies. She doesn't need obedience training, because she doesn't trust you, that you needed to work on the relationship, and you need to be the dad. You need to be the parent. She needs to be the kid. And start giving her rules and things like that. And then when I came over, I kind of saw the setup, and I remember she was kind of plastered to the left side of the couch.
Yes.
She was kind of stuck there.
Yes, all the way towards the end in the living room,
Yep,
right?
on the left, yeah, as you're going into the living room towards, I guess, the kitchen there on the left. And I just remember glancing down at her and saying, JP, you can do this. And he's like, and you were like, oh, I don't know. I just want to love her. I just want to help her. And I'm like, but you can't just want to help her, because you're going to just help her until she keeps getting worse and worse and worse. You have to change something. And so I tell everybody, if I can't change the human, I can't change the dog. So for me to look at Candace, and she's a beautiful dog. Her weight was a little funky. Her tail was tucked. She had her head down.
Right.
She was, very classic, fearful dog. And here was this sweet guy and his wife who were just, I don't even know if you guys were married at the time. I think you were engaged at the time.
Yeah, I think we were. Yeah. 2014. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And I just said, you guys, you can do this, but you can't do it the way you're trying to, because you're living in the past. You're letting her live in her past. And the only way to get past her past is for you to get past her past. And that's why I usually tell somebody, like, the dog lived in Oprah Winfrey's house. So this dog was spoiled rotten, and she had everything, and servants and chefs and all. And now she's slumming it with you. So set some rules. Stop feeling sorry for her, because we all know you can't love a spouse out of cheating. You can't love a child out of drugs. You have to set rules and boundaries and work on the relationship. And that's what you were so great about, was you were like just a sponge. And I remember how many phone calls we had.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of them. And lots of text messages. You opened a world of dog behavior that I just didn't know existed. So I was so hungry for more information that I just wanted to keep asking you all these questions and text messaging and emailing. And I think I wrote you some pretty long emails. One thing that's really funny, Janice, is just in prepping for this interview, I was looking through some old emails, and I saw an email that I sent you years ago about, I don't even remember what the issue was with what Candace was doing at the time, but your answer was so simple. It was like something like just chill out. Don't worry about it so much, because you're just going to drive yourself nuts. Like, she'll get it. Like, just don't worry. Yeah. That was like your simple answer. And that was only like a few years ago. So even a couple years into it, I still had to remind myself not to be so anxious about an outcome of like an exercise or training or something like that. So yeah, I think it was when you were doing agility training, and there was an obstacle that she was nervous about. And the problem is that when we start getting anxious, dogs are able to, listen, I train service dogs to detect blood sugar changes, to find cancer, to find other diseases and health conditions. I all the things I do. And the reason that I can do that is because I have that relationship with my dogs. My dogs love me more than almost anybody I've ever seen having their dogs love them. And I give my dogs rules. I don't discipline them. I hate that word, because I think of smacking somebody. But I set rules and boundaries. And I remember as a kid, the worst thing my parents ever said to me when I did something wrong, and unfortunately I was a really good kid, but I can remember hearing the words, "We're so disappointed in you." That was like, I wish they would have beaten me with a hammer instead of saying those words, because it would have hurt a lot less. And I just felt like I was so worried about, like, oh my gosh, I don't want to disappoint them again. And I think that's what a lot of dog owners, including you, especially when you're a newer dog owner or you've only had one dog. My favorite is people call me, I've had dogs my whole life. I've never had one like this. How many dogs have you had? I've had 2. This is my 3rd dog. And I'm like, oh, geez, like, seriously? I have 3 dogs and sleeping in a bed with me or more at a time, so you can't bring the old relationship. How many people were divorced and they bring that same behavior, that same problem into the new marriage, and guess what happens?
Same energy.
It breaks up too. Yeah. So you have to change that, and it's okay. I remember what I've told you a bunch of times. It's okay if it doesn't work the first time. Let her get comfortable with it. I always say, repeat things. My rule of threes, do things in threes because it starts to set a habit. So, for instance, a dog who, when you know this one, the doorbell rings. Woo, 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 woo. The dog's going crazy. So what happens? A dog barks, the takeout, the delivery guy gives you the food, walks away. The dog says, cool. Whether it's the delivery guy, the mailman, UPS, FedEx, I chased that guy away. I'll do it again.
Right.
Instead of ring the doorbell when you guys leave. Ring the doorbell when you come back. Ring the doorbell when familiar people come back. Because when you're ringing the doorbell only when there's a stranger, it's stranger danger. I always say danger rings doorbells. So if there is a danger, you should be the one to go to the door, check it out, and walk away. You say, oh, it's fine, right? No problem. And with Candace, I'm so proud of you because she was not that, for me, it wasn't a tough dog, but for anybody new, having a dog, she was a lot. I remember some of the growly issues with little kids and stuff like that. And she was this great dog. And you just look at her and like, we just want to help you. But you can't love her out of the behavior. You have to give her rules and work with great things like, changing the relationship so that the dog doesn't have to be in charge. The human's in charge, because when the human is in charge, everything goes smoothly. When the dog is in charge, especially a dog with fear or uncertainty issues, is where we get into some serious problems.
Sure. And Janice, a couple other things I do remember. I want to see if you remember about that first consultation. I remember us talking about chai lattes.
Oh, yes. I love chai lattes. Yes.
And I remember, Andrea made you a chai latte.
Homemade chai, and gave me a little thing of it too, a little extra thing of the spices. I had that for a couple of years.
And I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, I may have been wearing a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu t-shirt. And you did. You commented on it, and you talked to me about Hoist Gracie. And I was like, wow, this lady is awesome. How does she know?
What football team I like.
Yeah.
I have to find a guy who liked football. Now no guys like football. I sit there by myself on Sundays.
It is kind of funny because I'm not a football fan either. Sorry, Janice.
Oh, darn, man. All the good ones are either taken or not football fans. Or both.
Janice, just to ask you a little bit more of a more current question. The pandemic, right? We all saw the stories of shelters being cleared out and rescues not having any more dogs because people ran out and got dogs during quarantine. They didn't want to be alone or by themselves. Can you talk a little bit about the consequences of that? Like, what are you seeing now months later as a result of this?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. And actually on my one of my radio shows, For the Love of Dog, I talked about that starting in February when we started seeing COVID and they started closing things down then in March. And I told people, I said, you got to stick with the routine. Even if you're not leaving the house, go into the other room, put the dog in the crate if that's what you normally do. Go into the hallway, grab your coat, go into the bedroom with your coat. But keep that pattern alive because animals are creatures of habit. So are humans, right? We're animals. And what I am seeing is a lot of now first-time dog owners. So people who they got a dog because it's cool and they have friends who have dogs, but they're not really educated. And I've never been so busy with so many people. During COVID, I have been probably twice as busy as I normally was, which is kind of very busy anyway, running nonprofits and all, and training dogs and being a behaviorist. But the sad part, whatever, I try. I just try to help as many people. 3-time cancer survivor. I try to do everything I can because God put me here 4 times so far. Hopefully
Sure.
a while. But the biggest problem I see is people who don't understand and aren't realistic with what a dog is and what a dog needs. So they have their housekeeper or their kids responsible. And what my greatest fear is, when this pandemic is over, the shelters are going to be filled twice of what they were, because people aren't going to be able to handle things. And there are a lot of people already that are dumping dogs, first-time dog owners.
Right.
There are a lot of dogs, more dogs than ever, with behavioral issues, because listen, how many divorces are happening? I know like 3 people who just in COVID went from having great marriages to hating each other. I saw on Facebook, in which I try to not be on these social media sites, but I was on Facebook and I saw a woman who shall remain nameless ranting and saying, I hate my children, I hate my husband, they've ruined my life, I hate this, I don't want to be here, I wish I never had children. And guess what?
Wow.
Her kids saw that. And I understand people needing to vent, but be careful how you vent. Well, same thing. A lot of the people who have reached out and gotten dogs are, let's say, the husband who gets a dog and the other spouse doesn't want the dog, or a wife who goes out, or a boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever, goes out and gets a dog. And now that person goes back to work, and this other one is stuck with a dog, and they didn't really want the dog in the first place. So I'm a little nervous about what's going to happen when this whole mess is over, because I think we are going to have the shelters filled up. And I did hear about a shelter in Tennessee that was because they were losing money because there were no more adoption fees coming in after the giant, God forbid you actually keep some of the money and don't spend it all, right? And you save the money. But there was a shelter in Tennessee that was starting to breed the dogs that were getting dumped, the intact bitches and dogs, and was starting to breed them so they'd have puppies to give out.
This is a shelter doing this?
A shelter, yep, in Tennessee.
Wow.
Yep, and I think they probably heard from more than just me, and they're supposedly not doing that, but that's where it's been. I mean, where you couldn't find anything, and if you can find something, it's a fighting ring pit bull or aggressive, big scary dog, or something that's not adoptable. But also, what's happening is you have people who thought it was a cool idea to go out and get a dog, and then find out, wow, it's a lot of work. Like you did. You were cool because you didn't care what it took. You were so committed, and that's what I loved about you. And that's where you were very different from some of the people who call me. I'm super selective. I can get days where I get 10 or 12, 15 people calling me and wanting my help. And if it's something like, oh, we just got a golden puppy, I don't need to do that. Go find a local dog trainer who can handle it. Nothing, it's an easy one. If your golden retriever starts getting aggressive or protective or anything, then you call me back. But I can only do 3 a day because it's 3 to 4 hour session with each person and each dog. So I think that with the pandemic and everything, that has been something the demographic has changed. There are a lot more people who've never had dogs, so they're not recognizing that a dog that's growling at their toddler, that's a problem, because they say, oh, the dog is growling at you, so don't go near it, instead of saying, geez, our dog is growling at our toddler. So it's been a process, and there's a lot of good hair dye for my hair, so I know you shave your head, but my hair is not gray, only because Danielle and Jacqueline do a wonderful job on my hair, keeping it from becoming gray. But some of my clients are, wow, it's amazing I have any hair left at all with some of the people. But the great thing is I love most of the people who do reach out. I had like 4 or 5 people today I booked, and they all came from referrals, like yours came from a referral.
Sure.
And that means something, because if you refer somebody, I take extra good care of them, because if you refer somebody and they have a bad experience, then it comes back to you. So
yes, and you actually took very good care of us by providing us a very much needed discount at the time, because we did not have any money at the time. So we really needed help, and you really helped us. So I'm forever grateful to you.
It's not about money, and I donate so much money to my nonprofit, and
Sure.
To Merlin's kids. But
speaking of that, Janice, I want to talk a little bit about Merlin's kids. Can you just explain what it is you do exactly with the nonprofit and why it means so much to you? Like why you spend so much of your energy and your time into it?
Well, actually, I started in my first two corporations were 1985 and 1988. One was a horse equine business, which was relating to using horses in therapy, which was an unknown, unexplored topic at the time. In the 1980s, there was no equine assisted therapy. I was doing it. I'm kind of like one of those people who I create things, and then once the rest of the world catches up and starts doing a decent job, I go to something else. But it's always going to have something to do with horses, dogs, and kids. And so
you're a trendsetter, Janice, a trendsetter.
I try. I look at it as if I'm doing the same thing everybody else is doing, then there's no reason for me to be on this earth. So I have to do something and leave something so that the earth is a better place and that people's lives are better than before I got here, or if I hadn't been here.
Sure.
So around the year 2000, I lost my Lipizzan stallion, which is the dancing white horses from Austria. I lost him. His name was Merlin, and he was just the love of my life. I've never loved probably anything other maybe than my father and mother that I loved like I loved this horse. And when he died, for 6 months, I didn't ride a horse. I went from riding. The day before he died, I rode 9 or 10 horses, trained them every day as I was training horses. And doing rehabilitation on them as well. And I remember just not wanting to go anywhere. And I was very depressed, and I'm a super upbeat person. So for me to have been depressed like that, and I said, I've got to find a reason that this incredible horse that I would have been in the Olympics with him. I mean, he was truly that good. He was incredible. I have to find a reason why this horse at 10 and a half, 11 years of age, when these horses live to 30s, well into their 30s, why did this horse die? And I thought, well, gee, what did I do with him? And I realized I went to nursing homes. I went to my mother-in-law's nursing home, brought him in the parking lot. He would snuggle, this giant 1,300-pound stallion would snuggle with the patients in the wheelchair. I remember a lady sat up in a gurney, and Merlin put his nose on her, gently on her belly, and she just reached up and grabbed him around the head, like his whole head. And she starts saying, love, 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 love. And I found out that the woman had Alzheimer's, and she hadn't spoken in 4 or 5 years. They hadn't heard her say a word. And here this horse brought magic out. And Merlin was truly magical in every sense of the word. So when I started Merlin's Kids, but it was called something else. But when Merlin died, I said, I'm going to use his energy and his ability to connect without words. And I want to name my nonprofit for him. So I named it Merlin's Kids. I didn't name it Janice's Kids because it's not about me. None of my companies or books or anything has my name on it. It's all my animals or other people's animals or other people. But I think, like my brother always says, ad nauseum, self-praise is no praise. And it's really true. So, people will ask me like, why? Oh, you're so amazing. And you do all these great things and you help other people. Like, why would anybody do that? And my answer is, why wouldn't they? You should be helping other people. During 9/11, I think it brought out the best America had to offer. And I think COVID has brought out, some people it's good, but most people, I think it's brought out the worst we have. I mean, when people are ripping toilet paper out of an 80-year-old woman's hands because they want toilet paper, right. That's a problem, So I'm all about, using the animals, saving the animals from, shelters, strays. I mean, I've got a bunch from Aruba, work with rescue down there. I work with a couple of hundred rescues around the country and dozens and dozens of veterinarians and hundreds of obedience trainers who, will refer, and they say, a good trainer will say, I don't know how to fix this, but I know somebody who can, and will refer to me the same way as if somebody wants to do obedience with me, I'll say, I want you to go to Ryan or Brittany. They'll do obedience. You don't need me for this, do that. It's cheaper and they're good at what they do. So I think it's all about, with me, was just wanting to help more people. and save more animals. And so I kept building up my team. I trained people to become behaviorists. I trained people to become service dog trainers. And I mean, I'm a tough teacher. I'm very, I don't, I guess my first 30 or 40 years, I probably was a little softer and kinder and gentler, as you have to say. But you hit a certain number. I think I hit 40. I was just like, you know what? I'm going to get blunt because, I don't care if they like what I'm saying, but they need to do it. And I think people appreciate because they know that if I tell them, hey, I can fix your dog, I need your help, but we can do it. And they, like the man last week, he was going to put the dog to sleep last Monday. And I got there the weekend before, and he said, I believe you that you can help fix my dog. And I just talked to him today, and he's like, I can't believe it. My dog would have been dead if I hadn't met you. If I didn't know you existed, my dog would have been dead. So if I can create that and teach other people around the country and around the world, I have even 3 people in Bulgaria, of all the crazy places, England, Ireland, France, Netherlands, Aruba. So if people know what I know and they can do that there, even if they can't do everything I can do, they can help more than most people can. And obedience is not the answer for a behavioral issue, but not every dog has a behavioral issue. Some dogs can be fixed. Like I say, probably about 85% of all dogs. Your local obedience trainer can do fine. If your dog is jumping and that's the only thing he does and he's not barking or growling or biting or protective or has separation anxiety, your local obedience trainer can help. And if you see that behavior isn't being helped after a short time, not 6 months, a year, 2 years, but I'm very busy. I want to help you, and then I want to go help somebody else. I don't want to be working with that same dog because I have a lot of business. So for me, I want to give you all the information. Like that's why I wrote books. I want to give you all the information and all the support, and then be there for you to help you. And you know what? If you have a problem and you're getting to a sticking point, I'll take your dog for a board and train. But I don't use shock collars. I don't use prong collars. I hate those things. Choker chains. And somebody out there is going to be like, well, if you use a prong collar right, it doesn't matter. It's an energy. You should be able, I can walk 100. Actually, I have a little kid. My friend Josh's little daughter is probably 5 or 4, and she's a peanut. And her little brother is 2.5. They were walking Bruiser and another dog named Dexter. Dexter's 140 pounds, 135 pounds, and Bruiser's 100. And these kids were with a little slip lead walking the dog because the dog knows whoever's got the leash is following them. So I think people rely on gadgets and bark collars and all. If your dog is barking because it has an issue. It's trying to communicate with you. So you're going to zap it or squirt it in the face with something. You're not listening to the dog. You're just being a bully. And, I think that's why so many dogs end up in bad situations. And going back to your question, I think that's what drew me into it is I want people to understand, stop like that Susan Plowder or something. She's Susan Powder. There was a woman, she used to go, stop the insanity. And I feel like that. It's like, stop the insanity. Stop using shock collars. Stop using bark collars. Stop squirting your dog in the face. Stop like this crazy group that, these trainers, they throw these bean bags. It looks like a Frisbee, but it's got like a bicycle chain in it. They squirt them in the face. They zap them. Would you do that to your child? Well, if you did, you'd wind up in jail.
Right.
I don't think people really want to do those things. But I think that people feel helpless and they get somebody who comes in and doesn't really know what to do, but they're a legend in their own mind. They worked in a bakery or they were, working in a print shop making photocopies one day. And then they go the next day, I is a dog trainer. And, when people hire somebody, they assume that the person they hired has the qualifications that they would expect. Just because somebody's 50 years old doesn't mean they're doing it for 40 years. You could be their first client. You'll never know because they talk a good line. But if you go to a trainer, make sure you see results instantly. And I always tell everybody, because I do a lifetime guarantee, right? You know that.
Yes.
If they don't offer you, like my dad always used to say, you know, would you, if somebody was slow in their business, would you pay them hourly to build you a house? You'd have a house that would never get finished, and it would be very expensive when you could have spent a certain amount and gotten that house all completed. It's that same thing. Just get a final number, and if you don't see results, hey, say, you know what, can I have my money back? Because you said you could fix it and you can't. And go find somebody who can fix it.
Right. You know, I can't think of anything that is more controversial and polarizing between people that I've met in the dog world than the e-collars and the prong collars. And it's just one of those things where, like, just people will never, or they don't seem to agree on any kind of how can I say, like and there's no meeting in the middle, like, you know what I mean? Like, you either hate it, or there are people who say that they have their place.
They do have their place. They have their place when people like me can't fix it without that, and the dog's life is in danger. But the problem with shock collars, and they call them e-collars because they don't want to call them shock collars. They say, well, it's like a TENS machine. If you ever had an EEG, you know, where they zap your muscles.
Yeah.
It's like the electric chair. I had one of those a couple of months ago after a car accident, and it was one of the most painful things ever.
Like a TENS unit, right?
Yeah, but crank the TENS unit up. Oh, it's a vibration. Yeah, let me put that somewhere else on you. Let me pick where I want to put it on you, Mr. Trainer. And you give me the controller and you tell me. But there are, like, for sporting dogs, there are ones that use sound. Something like that is okay because it's a sound. The problem with all of these things, and the sporting dog ones, like my good old buddy Martin Dealey, who's not around, I used to do a show with Martin. He was fun. For sporting dogs, because the dog is far away from you, you need to use something. It's a handy thing because you can use a sound that the dog knows. It's a recall, the same as if you were whistling.
Right.
But the problem is and I've seen more dog fights by people who didn't know what to do, or even trainers who didn't know what to do, or used them improperly. You have a shock collar on two male dogs, both unaltered, and the dogs are looking at each other, and you zap them both. And 90% of the time, I'll say, just in my own experience, I'd have to think about finding one that fit in the 10%. I'll say 90% of the time, what happens is the dogs think the other dog bit them, so they get into a fight. So you have to think about, with a dog behavior, when a dog actually sees somebody, let's say the dog is looking at you, JP, and you have a shock collar on it, and somebody zaps it, he thinks you did that. So it's either going to make him afraid of you or it's going to make him hate you. And over time, you keep doing that. Dogs that have shock collars, and even sometimes with the e-fence collars, which are okay, the i-fence, you have that same thing where the dog, there was a chow I did up in lower New York State, had a shock collar on it, e-collar, and the dog got out because it blew through the battery, or the battery died on it. And a man tried to grab this dog. It was a large, one of the Asian breeds, 130 pounds or so. And the guy went to grab the dog's collar, and the dog freaked out, and it literally took part of his arm off. I mean, it was a pretty horrible injury. So the dog, when it's looking at you and gets zapped or feels pain, let's say it has a bad hip, it has nothing to do with a training collar, it has a bad hip, it thinks that whatever it's looking at is what caused that pain. And that's what the problem. You need your dog, if you're correcting your dog needs to see you correcting him. Not like a kid who's walking around and keeps feeling shocked, saying, oh my God, what's that? If the parent is next to him and gives him a little swat on the behind, the kid knows, oops, mommy did that. And so they don't become nervous. I've seen a lot of anxious dogs and dominant dogs become 10 times worse because they didn't know where that was coming from.
Would you say, Would you say, Janice, that could be due to improper use of the tool, or do you think that is just a natural reaction?
Yeah, I think certainly improperly using anything is a problem, but I think it's really just an organic issue with it. I've seen dogs come through 2-week boot camps that I know I could have fixed the dog in a way different way, a lot easier without the dog, but the dog is great, right? But then those are the people who will tell me, but the dog isn't the same anymore. He's almost like robotic. I hear that all the time. People say he doesn't have the personality anymore because he was it's basically like the Holocaust. You're zapping him, you're being abusive. I know, listen, I have 30 years of police canine. My husband started more than 200 canine units and assisted up and down the East Coast, started the National DARE program. So my husband was the canine guy. I know what goes on in police canine. I'm not going to tell anybody, but if you're in police canine, you know that some of the helicoptering dogs and things like that people do. So, or airplaning them, some of them call it. But, the key is you want to build a relationship. It's like, you have a spouse who abuses you, who beats you, and then says, but I love you. Well, but the bruise on my eye is still there, even though you're telling me you love me and you bought me roses to apologize, the bruise is still there. And I think this is, it's something, it can be used by some people can use it, very few, where they're using
Have you ever, I'm sorry to cut you off, Janice. I was just curious. Have you ever met another trainer who uses an e-collar on a low level setting as their baseline? Because I've heard some trainers refer to it as a working level, and it will be on something like a 9 or an 8 or whatever the numbers are. What's your opinion on that as an approach to training? Because,
well, the whole thing is flawed in my opinion. Not that things can't work, because, it's like kids can, let's say on a math test, and they come up with an answer completely wrong and they got the right answer. The problem again is with the training collar, the dog does not see who is correcting it. So it's not that it cannot work, but there are better ways to do it. And it's easy, it's quick, and zapping the dog, assuming you're not creating many more issues, which most of them do create issues. But if, let's say, a dog is dog aggressive and you're zapping the dog has to know that you, as the one being protected, so if the dog is protecting you and it feels pain or it feels whatever pressure, or feels a vibration, you aren't near that dog at the time. The dog doesn't always extrapolate that, hey, that's my owner doing that. A lot of times what happens is the dog is assuming that whoever it's looking at is the one that's doing that. So can it be? I've seen people use them. I've also seen disasters. And I think for the average person and the average local dog trainer who, hasn't had extensive training by somebody who's expert at that, I think you can really mess things up, because the dog needs to know. Listen, why do you need to use a shock collar and e-collar on whatever setting when you have fingertips, when you have a voice? You can do the same thing and not break down that relationship and not confuse the dog and make him hate when you put the collar on, because a lot of dogs do that. Then they get really funky about having something on their neck. So it's not that I'm not going to say every single person, but I've very few people I've ever seen who could use it as it was intended. And it's so easy to hit the wrong button or the wrong setting, or to hit the wrong dog. That happens a lot. I see people, they hit the wrong button and they hit the one that's not aggressive. And it's a gimmick. It's a gadget. It's, you look at it, those came out, 10, 15 years ago? Okay. What did we do with dogs when I was a kid? We didn't have those things. And our dogs were better behaved. The problems are people don't walk their dogs. If they do, the dogs are dragging them. They don't do what we had to do as kids. When I came home from school and in the morning, right, I had to take the dog for a walk. Then I went in, did my homework, and then I fed my dog. I was doing what we call hunt, wait, eat. I was doing it back then as a kid. My father made us do that, right? Take the dog for a walk, come back, do your chores, do your homework, whatever, eat your breakfast, whatever, then feed the dog, and then go to school. So I think if people realized how easy it really is, because that's already that's like putting your finger in the dike to try to get the water to stop. That's like the bathtub's overflowing and you're trying to put the stopper in it or pull the stopper out. How about just knowing that you have to leave the stopper out in the first place so it never floods? You're putting the toothpaste back into the tube.
Janice, I can't thank you enough for doing this. You're a super busy woman. Thank you again for being my first guest. Like I told you before, I couldn't think of anybody else more appropriate to have as my first guest than the woman who actually introduced me to dog behavior and doing it the natural way. So thank you again, Janice, for your time and for being on the show with me.
Thank you, JP. You're awesome. Keep it up.
All right. Thanks again to Janice Wolfe for being on my show. I really, really appreciate you. If anyone is interested in what Janice is up to, you can check her service dog program at merlinskids.org. You can also check out WYATT'S list. That's WYATT, WYATT'S list.com. And if you're interested in learning more about her natural canine behavior rehabilitation program, you can find that at unitedcaninepros.com. And for information on her cancer and disease detection dogs, you can go to merlinsheroes.com.
Thank you for listening to the Candace's Pack Dog Rescue Show. For news updates and training tips, make sure you follow us on Instagram and Facebook. You can find us at Candace's Pack Dog Rescue. If you would like to support the rescue, please visit our website at cpackdogrescue.org. For questions and comments, you can contact us at cpackdogrescue@gmail.com. And if you like the show, please subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your podcast app.